Shane McMahon. Oh boy. Oh boy. Let me talk about this. I already put a tweet out about this, but you can only say so much in a tweet. I mean, 230 or whatever, 240 characters, you just can't do it. Can't do it justice. That Shane McMahon segment, there were multiple ones, but I'm talking about the main one with him and Braun Strowman from Monday night, was one of, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, I've seen every episode of Monday Night Raw. So I am as much an authority on this as anybody else who has seen every episode of Monday Night Raw since 1993. And I can sit here and tell you, this will go down among the all-time worst segments that I have ever seen on Monday Night Raw. Not the most offensive, but one of the worst. Nothing happened. Nothing. Absolutely nothing happened. Everything that is wrong with these 3-hour shows where they just blather on and they're clearly just stalling for time because they have no good ideas. We just have to kill TV time. So we'll put two guys out there. They'll meander on about absolutely nothing, and then we'll get to cut to commercial. We just got to get to the next let's just get to Seg 8 or Seg 14. We just got to get to the next one. That's what this felt like. They have an army of writers in this company. Now, they have one showrunner, we know that, but they have an army of writers that work for them and get paid to do this for a living. And this is the best that they could come up with. Braun Strowman was in the ring. He was waiting for an apology from Shane McMahon because he's a big softie. He wants an apology. Or he's expecting an apology. Shane McMahon, he pretends first that his microphone doesn't work. And he leaves the ring to grab a new microphone so he can put some distance between himself and Braun. His microphone was fine. He just wanted to put some distance between him and the big man. He proceeds as he is walking up the aisleway. He's going to cut his promo in the aisle. He proceeds to breathe heavily into the microphone as he stalls to see what he wants to say next. Here, let me do my best Shane McMahon impression here in 2021. This is not the old Shane McMahon. This is the current version of Shane McMahon. Let me do my best Shane McMahon impersonation. You know what that sounds like when I go to the doctor and he has the stethoscope and he tells me to breathe in and breathe out? Shane McMahon, it feels like he thinks he's in a doctor's office every time he's cutting a promo and has a microphone in his hand. I don't think he actually forgot, as some people thought he forgot his lines. I don't think he forgot anything. I don't think he forgot his lines. I think this went exactly the way they wrote it. He was trying to frustrate Braun Strowman. Braun is waiting for him to say something. He's waiting for his apology, and Shane just can't get it out. He said nothing. His labored breathing would worry any doctor who was watching this show. He said he didn't want to call Braun stupid, which he ended up doing anyway at the end of this because he's the heel in this. Braun eventually chased after him to the back. That is literally all that happened in this segment. If I am fortunate enough to live to a ripe old age, and I am sitting here at home, all shriveled up, like a raisin in my final days, recording Sound Off episode 2798, looking back on my life and how I spent my time, I'm going to remember this Shane McMahon segment and regret the fact that I wasted those minutes of my life that I would give anything to have back. This sucked, and it did absolutely nothing to get anybody interested in seeing Braun Strowman against Shane McMahon at WrestleMania. We know Shane is going to fall from a high place, the fucking pirate ship in the back of the stadium or something. We know this. It's what he does. It's the same thing that they built to that big spot with him and The Miz at WrestleMania 35? I'm watching this guy and I'm listening to him and the breathing and the profuse sweating in a lot of his promos. And I'm not even sure how this guy gets cleared for physical contact. How does he get cleared to wrestle? They have taken other guys who are in far better physical shape than he is, and they would tell them you can't even... Look at Christian. Christian, when he came back last year to have that segment with Randy Orton, He talked about this on Renee Paquette's podcast this past week. They wouldn't even let anybody could touch him physically. It was off limits. How does Shane McMahon get cleared to do anything? I guarantee you that person, if that was a wrestler, that person would not be cleared to compete. Dr. Maroon in Pittsburgh would say, no way. You're not doing this. We're keeping you out. Every time I see this guy on TV, he looks like he's 4 steps away from a pacemaker. I'm begging the medical staff there, please, give this man a stress test and an echocardiogram, please. By the way, we are now 4 weeks away from back-to-back nights of WrestleMania. Shane McMahon, it's not official, but clearly Shane McMahon is going to have a match on that show. And AJ Styles has no match. Now, if Triple H is going to wrestle, and every week that goes by, it looks less likely, but we still have a month, so they could still put something together. There's still time. I still expect that if Triple H does wrestle, if he does have a match on this show, that AJ is probably going to be the opponent. It's a match that's never been done before. AJ has openly talked about the fact that he wants to have that match at some point. But if not, if he's not going to wrestle, how is it that one of the best guys that you have on your roster is totally directionless right now? I was looking at the Raw roster to see, because I'll get the inevitable question, well, Solomonster, if you feel that way, then who would you put him in the ring with? And so I took a look at the Raw roster to just remind myself of exactly who's being used and who's on the roster that's not being used. I just talked about one of those guys a little while ago. I looked up and down that roster, and there aren't very many good options, but honestly, if they had not buried Ricochet as a complete geek for so long, AJ Styles against Ricochet, which they've already done a couple of times on TV, but let's say they hadn't, or again, Ricochet was not a complete geek, AJ Styles one-on-one at WrestleMania against Ricochet would have been a fantastic opener, I think, on night 1 of WrestleMania. AJ's been in the opener before. He had an opening match with Shane McMahon, funny enough, at WrestleMania 33, and it was one of the best matches on the entire WrestleMania show. So AJ and Ricochet could have been an option. Now it's just laughable to even think about. If Keith Lee wasn't hurt, and I do believe that's why Keith Lee has not been on TV. I believe he is out with some sort of injury. I don't know how serious it is. I think Keith Lee and AJ Styles one-on-one could have been another great option. But it is just amazing to me that we are here talking about Shane McMahon and his labored breathing going into WrestleMania, and yet AJ Styles is a man with no match.